Thank you, Stephen, in advance for sharing with the Front Row fans your experience of working with Metallica. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so I think I've worked kind of on and off and around the band for probably 7, 8 years. I don't know. I think I've lost track at this point. But I do a ton of work with the Blackened whiskey, Blackened cigars. I do some of the stuff for the band. We do merch. We do all kinds of different stuff when they're on tour and different things like that. But yeah, primarily around Blackened.
Blackened around. How did you land a gig with Metallica? I'm sure is the burning question for a lot of designers or music
It,
fans out there.
man, I tell you, it's the question I get all the time, and it's the least
Okay.
impressive story ever. Because the funny part, so I was the head of design at Citibank at the time. It
Okay.
was the end of the year. It'd been a really long year, and I was just sort of burnt out, and I needed a break, and I just was like, I need to be done. And I got a call from a friend of mine who said, "Hey, look, I'm working on this project. I've got this client that I think is kind of tough. They fired 3 agencies." And he's like, "Look, I need to get this back under control." He's like, "Look, I think you're the only guy that can do it. Can you please help me?" And the funny part was I said no. And I was just like, "Look, it's been like too long of a year." And he's like, "Look, like if we can't do this, I think I'm gonna get fired. Like, can you please do this?" So the funny part was I basically gave him the go away price, where I took what I normally do for like a brand workshop and tripled it. And of
Yes.
course he came back and said, "Sure, that sounds great." And it was like, crap. And he's like, "Oh, and it's for like a rock band." And I was like, crap. Um, and so then after I do all this, then they say like, "Okay, it's gonna be for Metallica." And it was like, okay, I'm a fan, but like I have no idea what I'm gonna get into.
Yeah.
It probably was one of the most interesting brand workshops I've ever been a part of because, they said, "Look, we want to build a whiskey. We need to do a brand. We want it to sort of be adjacent to Metallica." But I think they were smart enough to realize that like celebrities and rock stars are not viewed the same, right? Like
Right.
if Ryan Reynolds does aviation gin, he's a genius. If Metallica does a whiskey, it's a money grab.
Right.
Um, and so we're about half or 2/3 of the way into the first brand workshop. And all of a sudden I just sort of stop everything. And I said, "Look, I know why you guys keep firing everybody." And, their management's there. And like all of a sudden the room gets really quiet. And I said, "You guys have never actually mapped out what your brand is."
Mm.
And like everybody's sort of looking at themselves. I said, "Look, I get it. Like the band's been together for 40 years, but I said, you can't build an extension of the brand if you don't know what your brand actually is."
Oh,
So we
okay.
ended up doing it. We spent a day sort of like doing the brand architecture for Metallica, and then we spent a day building what would become Blackened. But
Interesting.
yeah, it was hysterical. I literally went kicking and screaming into working with probably like some of the best clients I've ever worked with.
And no one thought about doing that in an agency, if you think about it, right? Which is the first
I
thing you
think
would
that,
do,
and look,
potentially.
and I think that one of the problems is that I think a lot of designers need to remember, like, just because their fame increases, your talent doesn't decrease.
True. Yeah.
Right. And I think that because one of the things I noticed in talking with everybody is they kept using this word, right? They would talk about, like, we would have an idea and we would have to like metallicize it, right? Which is, how do you take something and make it Metallica?
Yeah.
And that was what I started to realize is what that meant was that either everybody would go to either all of the band or a member of the band and say, "What do you think?" Or they had been with them for 30 years
Mm.
and just sort of understood, right? But if you
Right.
had to communicate that, it became very difficult. So, yeah,
Understood.
and I think just they run an insanely small group of people around them.
Okay.
And so they have an insane amount of trust, but that's sort of why it was the way it was.
Interesting. So when you landed the gig, I'm sure you were, and then everything worked out after the mapping. It just went smooth sailing at that point.
It did. And honestly, I think
Yeah.
and it was interesting because I think it's rare. I think it's rare that you meet somebody where you're like, you are not at all what I expected.
Yes. There's
And
always
I
that
think,
perception, right? Like,
and it
yeah.
is, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I said that was my reaction. It's like, it's a rock band. It's like, crap.
Yeah.
Um, because look, I think you very, 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 very quickly see why they've been so successful for so long.
Okay.
Because I think they show up and they have opinions, and their team show up and they have opinions, but they also listen to the experts in the room.
Okay. That's good. Yeah. Awesome. Did you want to share with us any particular projects that you had in mind that you're passionate about?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a good segue. I mean, one of the ones I get asked about a lot was, I mean, look, I think one of the biggest challenges is, again, as you're sitting there, you're saying, look, I need to create a whiskey where 50% of my clients are sober.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not an insignificant thing. And so I think, a lot of it was as we were building the brand, I tried to be thoughtful about what were ways to bring Kirk and to bring James into the whiskey and always sort of ask them before I did it. Um, One of my favorite stories that I think always lines back to why I think they were such good clients is, um, one of the things I always loved is if you're ever around James or if you see it on pics, like he doodles all the time. He's actually a huge design and type nerd.
Okay.
His mom was an interior designer, and I always loved his handwriting. He has a very, I'd almost say it looked like an architect or something, just very structured, very interesting. And I thought like that could be a really cool thing to do would be to get James's handwriting and make it into a font.
Oh, okay.
So we were shooting a project with them called the Blending Sessions, which was basically the band and the whiskey distiller talking about the background. I told James, I said, look, I need like 5 minutes with James after just to do something. And it was like, okay. And this was the entire process to do this, right? Like if you work at a company doing anything, it's like meetings and meetings and red tape. And so I went up to James afterwards. I said, James, look, I've got this idea. And he goes, what? And I said, I think it'd be really cool to make like a font out of your handwriting. And he was like, is anybody going to want that? And I was like, look, I think it's going to be really cool. And he said, I said, would you be into that? And he said, hell yeah. What do you want me to do? That was the entire process.
Wow.
Right. So
Yeah.
again, I think this is one of the artifacts everybody always asks about. So literally, and there's like photos of it on my Instagram. I had him
Amazing.
sit down and I had a type sheet and gave him a big Sharpie and he sat down and wrote out the whole alphabet. And so for the brand, we created a font called HetFont Bold
Oh,
um, that we used on packaging. We use it on advertising. We use it on, it's like we did a Happy Meal for them. So like that's
so
James's
that's
handwriting there on the front.
amazing.
This was an amazing, yeah. Whenever Metallica comes to you and says, "Look, we're partnering with the celebrity chef. Can you design us a Happy Meal?"
Yeah.
Um, that was amazing. It
Wow.
came with probably the most sought after picks like
Oh,
out
yeah.
there recently, which is see, this is where the reflections get me.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's three in there. There's a Danny Wimmer pick. There's a Blackened 72 seasons with the snake on it.
Amazing.
And yeah, but so again, we started using it. And again, I talked to James and said, look, like, are you okay if we put your handwriting on, stuff to do with alcohol? But that was the whole process, right? It was just like, I
Yeah.
have this idea. Do you want to do it? And that was it.
Amazing. Can you purchase that font or is it exclusively used for
Nope.
the
No,
branding? Yeah,
people have
exclusive.
tried. I think a couple people have even tried to kind of recreate it.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
no, I think partially it's just out of respect for James's kind of privacy and that sort of thing. But
Of course. Yeah.
and it's a custom brand font. No, I've joked a few times with James that like my eBay has never been better since I got his handwriting. But I always laugh hard. He laughs a little, and then I have to remind him that I'm joking.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, for sure.
but no, but again, I think that sort of thing where it's amazing the sort of work you can do whenever you know your clients trust you in that sort of way.
Yeah, definitely. Um, what else did we want to ask here? For all the pick collectors that are out there, because I've noticed on your Instagram you had a nice variety. How many picks did you design for, I guess, the Blackened brand, or what does it all entail? It is the
So
Blackened and the white
yeah,
brand.
and that's the funny
And
part is I was trying to go back through today. It's somewhere in the 30s. So the funny part is I
30s.
actually
Okay.
don't have them all. Like there's been times I've actually had to go on tour and I'll have to talk to like road managers, stuff like that, and be like, hey, I was like, can I design that? Can I get one?
Okay.
I think it's in the 30s. The funny part, so I think, yeah, my collection is rather small of the ones. Like I do have the
Wow.
Rob Dietrich one that has
Yeah.
James's sketch of Rob on the back. That one's always hard to come by.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah.
I've got some from Ross Halpern and some of those sort of things. It's somewhere in the 30s. I have seen a photo of one person. I'll send it to you. Who
Okay.
who I think he thinks he has them all, and
Oh,
it's somewhere, and it's like framed in a case like this.
wow.
Um,
Okay.
but yeah, I think just
Okay.
because I know there's some are at shows, some are in promotions, some are in like the
Yeah.
Happy Meal, some are, um, yeah, I'm sure like
Right.
Metallica has an archive somewhere where they know how many there are. I don't know. I mean, I know they've got like 6 or 7 storage units somewhere in San Francisco, but yeah.
Maybe you can share with us the artwork and we'll do a separate post for the collectors so they can collect them all. And
Yeah,
we have,
I'm happy to share it. And
yeah,
I know there's at least
we have
two to
these little
four more
guys.
coming for, yep, the
Yeah.
Ride the Lightning one.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know both of
We don't
those
have
really
all of them,
well.
but we're gonna work on it.
I just sent designs for the next tour in, so I know there will be more.
Okay, amazing. Tell us a little bit about you. What kind of music are you into, and what would be a potential maybe band you like to work with in the future?
Oh Lord. Um, I always kind of joke I'm into like everything but country and opera.
Okay.
So I think like I've got picks in my collection. Like I love the blues, so I've got stuff I've got from BB King and Billy Gibbons and
Oh, okay.
um, a lot of Metallica stuff. Always loved Pearl Jam. Like it's just I'm all over the place with a lot of that
Okay.
sort of stuff.
Okay.
Um, and I think for me, it's always there's a lot of bands I think I'd love the idea of working with,
Okay.
but it would need to see like are they actually going to be open to doing fun or crazy stuff or those sort of things,
Right.
because there's sometimes you meet those people and it's like I said, like I went in with a totally wrong assessment of Metallica and it was like you guys are amazing, and sometimes
Yeah.
it's like you guys are going to be amazing and it's like okay, yeah, no, but
All right. Are you going to go see Metallica and the upcoming tour at all, or any
I
plans there?
am. I think that's
Okay.
I know I'll be at a couple shows. I think I'm still trying to figure out which ones. Just because I think, one, people friends are always like, "Oh, are you going to be in town? Can we go?" So I
All
think
right.
they think
They
it's like
want to
make a
piggyback.
wish or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So no, I
Yeah.
usually I try to go to at least 1 to 2 shows. Sometimes it's because there's work or we have to shoot
Sure.
or do something with the band or do stuff like that. Um, yeah, no, I think the last tour I only caught the last show in Seattle just because I was busy working on other stuff. But no, I always try to get out to at least see 1 or 2 a year. But right now, I'm not sure which ones quite
Okay.
yet. But I think
They're coming
Toronto
to
would be a
Toronto. Yeah.
Toronto would be a really
More than
good
welcome.
candidate just because I
Yeah.
love it there. So
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate for answering some of these questions, and hopefully the fans will enjoy this as well. And yeah, thanks again, and stay tuned for more Front Row Fans content.